Please stand by.
Frankly, I blame the fact that all the two of you are hearing when anything is going on is the Balatro music.
Sorry, what was that? I can't hear you over the sound of card.
Check. How is that?
Check.
Is that better?
I think you fixed it, yeah.
Okay. Sorry for that.
Whoops. All right. Start over.
All right.
All right, let's backtrack to the last 45 minutes. Here we go.
Welcome to episode 309 of the Platformers Podcast.
A show about technical difficulties on Twitch streams.
Oh, my Lord.
Hyper Grinder, good. Balatro, addictive. Harold Halibut, visually spectacular. Stellar Blade. We're good. You're caught up. Go.
Yeah, pretty much, actually. Nice. Thanks for the little roundup. Yeah, so Asgard's Wrath 2.
And now, the ghost that stole thickness, Brian Barnett, will talk about Asgard's Wrath 2.
Asgard.
Asgards, yeah, baby. No, but yeah, speaking of anatomy, one thing that I thought was very interesting was at the very beginning of the game, they give you an option to, yes, the Oculus game. Yeah, so I got a review key for Asgard's Wrath 2, so I jumped into it. I'm still fairly early. I'm only like, I think 2 hours in or something like that. But they give you an option to choose either a male or female avatar, and I was like, I'll pick a lady. Why not? And I was like, I wonder if this will be one of those situations where, because it's VR, to increase immersion, when you look down and look at your body, you'll actually see your body, or if it'll be like you'll look down and it'll be like in Halo and there will be nothing and you'll just see like your arms and the gun or whatever. No, full on, it creates your entire body and your armor and stuff like that. And so when I was going into VR, I would like hold out my arms and they were like glowing, and it was doing a great job of approximating where my limbs would be. I was looking down, seeing my legs as I like walked. It was like a little bit jittery, but it was trying to, get that moving. And I was very impressed with the way that it kind of puts you in a space. There are 3 options that I thought were really interesting for like the level of tunneling that you want to experience. Which is supposed to increase immersion, but can also cause people to feel a little sick, which I had never experienced until this. So I'm going to try to modify those and come back next week with like some updates on like how successful I was with kind of assuaging that nausea.
The inevitable motion sickness of VR,
yeah. The weird thing is there are a lot of little tricks that they use to keep you grounded. So you move your left analog stick and that will move you around, but then you also are free to look. But where I thought the game really started to sing was when you could try to like pick things up in the environment with like the little grip trigger things. And then you can do that when you're in combat. So one of the first things they do is they have you fight this dragon. And they have you like pick up a sword from the ice, and like it was very like immersive and intuitive. And then there's one of my favorite moments so far is they're like, you're like one of the new gods and you're still awakening your powers. And they're like, hold your sword up to the heavens. And I did. And I was like, no way. And lightning strikes it and charges it up. And I'm like, dude, this is so cool. And then you're just like swinging it around and smacking the dragon and with your like electric sword attacks and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. And you're doing the Link to the Past Aghanim boss fight where the dragon is shooting a fireball at you and you're like smacking it back at him with your sword. Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. Anyways, I have limited experience. A lot of this was like me trying to get set up with the game and make sure that everything was configured properly. I set it up downstairs where I've got like more room in the living room and stuff like that. But I've also played it like seated. You got options. I do not know if there's a Madsmatic in the chat says, do you know if there's a significant difference between the Oculus 1 and Oculus 2 versions? I do not. I have the Quest 2, and I know that one of the big things with this game is that it is, I believe, included if you buy the Quest 3. So I know that there's probably like a big push with that one.
One of the things about the MetaQuest 2 as opposed to the first one is that MetaQuest 2 is a standalone. So it's significantly less powerful and some games don't handle it as well. But it sounds like you were playing on Quest 2 and weren't suffering any real issues. I've got a game on there where a big mechanical part of the game is actively undone by the lower horsepower on the Quest 2.
Oh, interesting.
Jeez, I even reviewed this and I don't... Like, there's this entire mechanic where you're supposed to have to use sound and environmental cues to get around this invisible enemy. But because the Quest 2 is less powerful and the game isn't terribly downscaled very well, you can just kind of see a visual distortion off in the distance and there's no challenge to it whatsoever.
Oh.
You just walk right around it.
Interesting.
But it sounds like you were having no such problem with that with your Quest 2. So
No.
I would say that you're probably in good shape doing the Quest 2 on this one.
Yeah, I will definitely say it's not like some visual tour de force or something like that. So I don't know if graphically, I'll try to do a little bit of searching and figuring out what the Quest 3 version differences are, and if there's like some big graphical discrepancy between the two. But the vibe that I got from playing it is that like it looks better than Skyrim, but it's like that kind of like PS4 era kind of style. And it's about to that degree, but that's fine with me. Like that's not a big deal. I don't really care what it looks like. I just care if it's fun and feels good and is interesting, which it certainly seems to be. But yeah, I'll have to see if I'm sure it is, because you can stream from Steam to the Quest, but if it's not available in the Quest store, then I'll have to see like what the differences between this and Skyrim are, because it does seem to me to be something kind of similar to that. Just in like the overall kind of vibe. Like if you're looking for hey, what's this like? That's kind of the first comparison that I had. You're in a tavern, you're wandering around, and you can freely like stand up and crouch and look around and grab things and throw them around. I threw a tankard of ale across the room and it made a big clattering sound as it sloshed off the back wall. And I was like, this is pretty good. I'm easy to please,
That's why I was really worried that when you started talking about Asgard's Wrath 2, you were warming up to a Shaggy Dog joke about how you played as a lady and it models your entire body. And then I looked down and that was all you did for the rest of the game, because you looked down at your own virtual rack.
Well, I mean, you could see that, and there is a section where the what is it, the Sisters of Fate remake your form, and you turn into like a blue, like all your skin and stuff is gone, and it's just like the muscle dragged across your bones and stuff, and it's very strange, and it's particularly strange because like that is not what my body looks like, but it was more novelty than true distraction.
How dare you? I'm flayed right now.
Well, I couldn't tell because you're wearing clothing.
Well, that's why I'm wearing clothing, jackass.
That makes sense. You wouldn't. It's very sensitive. And yes, Madsmatic, it did make me feel like a natural woman, although I was not.
You got to experience your first magical girl transformation. How do you feel?
Magical. Appropriately, but yeah, but I'll definitely be playing more of that. And I'm also planning, once I get further into it, I am planning on also checking out like some other stuff I've played a little bit of Beat Saber. I definitely want to like incorporate that into kind of my routine because that seems really fun and like a neat
Still
way
the best
to kind
game
of-
on VR, like
Yep.
hands down.
The thing that really sold me on VR at first was Super Hot, actually.
Super hot.
That game is super, super fun. How robust are the customization options, given that you probably won't be looking a whole lot at your player model? It seemed like a binary. It seemed like they were just like, there was a moment very early on where they have you in kind of this in-between realm, and there's like a little stone figure of what looked like they're very like dramatized, but it was like a woman with a sword, like a stone figure, and then what looked like a dwarf with like a very long beard and a shield and an axe, almost like chess pieces is kind of what they looked like. And I just like clicked on the woman model, and then that was kind of it. Maybe I'll have more customization later because they made kind of a point of like, oh, you're like a fledgling god. We're going to remake you into this new form. So maybe that will be something I'll unlock later, like some sort of customization or something. But I'll definitely report back in when I've gotten further into the game and seen what else it has to offer.
As a big horror sicko, my big MetaQuest 2 recommendation is this indie called Lies Beneath, which is kind of a interactive EC horror comic from the 50s with very heavy Silent Hill vibes. Basically, your character is a woman from a small town in Alaska who survives a car wreck with her father, but when she comes to, the car is empty and she can't figure out where her father went. And as you try to find your way back into town to look for him, shenanigans ensue. Very much takes advantage of VR to be as strange as possible, very tactile combat. Not a game I hear a lot of people talking about, but it's something I like to throw out when people are talking about MetaQuest 2 games.
For sure. Yeah, Mazmatic in the chat says, my kids were given an OC2 for Christmas. Super Hot seems fun. Yeah, it is. It is. Super Hot is the thing that made me really believe in the medium because of how immersive it was and how thoughtful it was and how it really reframed the way that I kind of thought about these sort of interactions, even having played Super Hot on console previously. I thought it was really cool. Madsmatic asks, Thomas, is it fast-paced or closer to Myst?
Is Lies Beneath?
Yeah.
It's more like a first-person shooter.
So kind of like Fear, but more, I don't know, atmospheric.
It's got a little bit more juice to it than Fear. I mean, okay. I'm trying to think of an example that a useful comparison which makes sense to anybody who isn't me, because the first thing I thought of was this really obscure Xbox game called Breakdown, and that doesn't help anybody. But yeah, it's
Is
more
that the one where you're using your fists, or am I thinking of something else?
yeah. It's you fist fight aliens a lot in Breakdown.
Yeah.
It's more like a walking simulator with combat.
Oh my God. Yes, I did remember Breakdown correctly. It was the one with the fist and a bunch of the eyes on the cover. Yeah.
Yeah. Breakdown is the one where it feels like the weird uncle of Fear and a lot of the other super immersive first person games, because that was the first game I ever played where I was able to do a backflip from first person perspective.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not usually motion sick for first person shooters, but that did it. That really did not help me at all.
Yeah. How did you deal with Mirror's Edge?
Poorly.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Well, my biggest problem with Mirror's Edge was more that I'm an achievement sicko. So I took a look at the achievement list and went, you know what? I'm going to go for Test of Faith straight out the gate. Don't do that.
Yeah. That's like me doing doing Dishonored stuff and starting those games when I was an achievement sicko and going for what is it, Ghost and Clean Hands at this on the same playthroughs. Like I literally just did.
Yeah, the first time I played Dishonored, I swear to God, one of the guards I left unconscious in a pile behind me found a way to drown himself.
It happens.
Half an inch of water. It was right there.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Such a shame. But yeah.
Apparently he picked a real bad time to have a dark night in the soul, and it was on my time, not his.
Ugh.
And that just fucked the whole thing up. So at that point, I stopped caring.
Yeah. Stone Cold
Dishonored's
shame.
a better game where you if you do attempt, like it's cool to attempt that, but I found it leads to the mentality of a lot of quick saving and quick loading, and that really cuts into the fun of Dishonored, I feel. It's so much better to just live with consequences.
Well, if you've got that problem with Dishonored, and I don't blame you for it, play the Death of the Outsider DLC.
Yeah.
It's a standalone thing. It's got you play as Billy Lurk, and it has no karma system whatsoever. And I remember distinctly playing about a chapter and a half into that and realizing, wait a second, they told me there's no karma system. Why am I creeping around corners like this?
Yeah. And
then I started fashioning every overseer I saw into an Art Deco murder project, and I felt a lot better about things.
Yeah. Yeah, and that game got short shrift for how good it is. I really like it. I still think Dishonored 2 is probably my favorite, but it did add a lot, and I think it's definitely a worthy entry. They probably should have just called it Dishonored 3, even though it's a little bit shorter.
I do keep hearing rumors that they're at the very least exploring a Dishonored 3.
God, I hope so.
Yeah, I think that came up in the relatively recent Bethesda discussions. Yeah,
I really hope
actually
so.
will though. And I mean, the Redfall fiasco means Arcane is not Arcane anymore. So yeah,
which is a shame. But there's a couple of things that I say as the years kind of go on, which is, Dishonored is my only solace in a world without BioShock. And then both of those went away. And then Fire Emblem is my only solace in a world without, Final Fantasy Tactics. And then Fire Emblem decides that it wants to make you date your students. And I'm like, no. So, but then Triangle Strategy came out and all was forgiven.
Yeah.
Did I ever talk to you about Wintermoore Tactics Club?
I don't think so.
It's an indie from a few years ago, which is essentially based on the snowball fight from Final Fantasy Tactics Advance.
Ooh. There was a rock in that one. Yeah.
It was made by this guy who's a former 343 guy. It was a locally made game here in Seattle, and basically, if you have a Final Fantasy Tactics-sized hole in your heart, it's pretty much there for you. Nice. If I remember correctly, the whole deal is that it's got kind of that like a dragon thing where the mechanics are specifically defined as the imagination of the protagonist. That every level of that game is a snowball fight between kids at a boarding school, but displayed tactically with character classes because the protagonist is a lonely fantasy gamer weirdo.
Nice.
But if you are if you are looking for that tactics vibe, then by all means, Wintermoore Tactics Club. It's on Steam. I think it might be on Switch by now.
Yeah, I think the last Wintermoore.
There's also Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark, which I know you've played.
Yeah, I was going
Wintermoore
to
Tactics Club.
Tactics Ogre.
Yeah, I was going to say that Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark was the last game that I played that really kind of scratched that itch, but I really did not care for the art at all, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things about being in this hobby at this point is that unless the game that you're jonesing for is something that only 3 people ever played in the first place, then there is at least one indie team which has the same Jones you do, and they've been working for 3 to 5 years on a spiritual sequel which will scratch the same itch.
Or they've been working for 5 to 10 years on that the follow up to that, which is "Where the hell are you, Silk Song?"
Yeah, or there's this game called Echoes of the Living, which is supposed to come out at some point soon. If I remember correctly, it's by a boyfriend-girlfriend dev team in Finland, and it's very much a Resident Evil 2 clone, the OG, with fixed camera angles and resource conservation and all that good stuff.
There's a hell of a lot of that going around. Like just recently, we were talking about what was it, Heartworm? Lucas, you and Will were talking about that.
Yeah, whenever sorry about that.
No, you.
Whenever VGB's launches, it's supposed to launch here in the near future. I've got an interview with the developer of Heartworm going up on there.
Neat.
Yeah, this looks Echoes of the Living. This looks interesting. I mean, I'm not a zombie guy. Like the closest I get to stuff like that is like Dead Space. But
well, you know how every so often you'll see somebody ask, "Who is all this zombie stuff for?"
Yeah, is it you?
It's me.
Ah, gotcha.
And that looks like something I would have made. So there you go.
Yeah, looks cool. Yeah, it definitely does have that like fixed camera, which I dig. Actually, there was a thing going around with somebody did like a take on Final Fantasy VIII where there was like clearly a super blocky version of somebody in like a overcoat, like fur jacket, just like running around. Somebody's like, "Aren't you hot in that jacket?" And it's like, games used to look like this. And it's like, yes, they did. And I loved those games. Like I miss it when like you'd walk, off the screen and then it would be like a big overhead cam and you'd be running around the square talking to different people. And then a little girl who has balloons. "Hey, mister, do you want this? I found it in the bushes over there. Ding, ding. You got a Phoenix down."
Pushing X1, yeah.
Yeah. But Madsmatic says Advance Wars Reboot Camp, perhaps? Maybe. I never actually played Advance Wars.
That is a good one, yeah.
As I mentioned, Madsmatic is a friend of mine, and he is an Advance Wars sicko, so you can't really trust his perspective on that. He would have recommended you Advance Wars if you told him, "Yeah, I'm really jonesing for Choo Choo Rocket."
Or what is it? Demolition Squad or whatever.
Or Hoonie Pop. It wouldn't matter what you were jonesing for. He would have recommended you Advance Wars.
You know what I'm really jonesing for? I'm really jonesing for
Sourdough Jack. Have you considered
Muse Dash? Have you ever considered Advance Wars? Why did the Shantae artist also draw Choo Choo Rocket?
Okay, that's a lot.
And they're saying, so you're saying there's still a chance for Einhander too. Hey, you never know. You never know.
There is no chance. There's absolutely no chance.
There's probably
never
no
happening.
chance, unfortunately.
You got to do Urguys too first.
Yeah.
See, that's where my brain went first as well. What the hell?
That's so funny. That's where my head
God
went
bless the
too.
rig.
What a fucking game. I can't believe that exists.
Yeah.
That ought to be the Platformers Mystery Tournament.
Urgies.
You just pull out a bunch of random head versus head games and see who wins.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody who they are first, or Urguys is on the list. Twinkle Star Sprites.
Urgies
Everybody
is on the
brings
list.
a single game, and we all have to go through it. Yeah.
Star Wars Masters of Terrascasi is on the list.
Ravenloft Iron and Blood.
Oh God, what else?
Wu-Tang Shaolin style.
Yeah.
50 Cent Blood in the Sand, and it's just going to be a speedrun tournament.
I've played Thrill Kill, so
Not too far off, honestly.
Oh, God, what's the one? God, what was that one for 360? Like Murder TV or something? Oh my God!
I mean, Smash TV goes
Smash
all the
TV.
way back.
There you go. There you go.
Actually, I was right. Wow. All right.
did you just say Smash TV was for the Xbox 360?
No, I don't think so. I must be thinking of the wrong one.
You're probably thinking of the concept. Smash TV goes way back. I played it on the SNES.
What's the God, there was what? The cover had like people's faces on it in the background. They were like chasing somebody out. That wasn't the idea was you're like running for your life and a bunch of people are trying to run after you to kill you. And it was like for a fictional television show, like reality show. Oh my God, what was it called?
I mean, all of these are just the Running Man applied to video game.
Yes,
so.
yeah. No, I remember because it was back when I used to work at CompUSA. Like I would constantly see the cover as I was walking through, as I worked in software. So I was always like doing that sort of stuff. Oh my God, it's going to drive me nuts. It's going to drive me nuts.
Again, it's not that uncommon a concept.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Bloodsports in the future.
Madsmatic says FFT was a unique kind of scratch. Didn't feel the same for Tactics Ogre or Front Mission. Yes, I agree. Because I played Tactics Ogre: The Night of Lotus on, I think, Game Boy Advance.
Yes, GBA.
And I played one of the Front Mission games on, I want to say, PS2, and then also I think there was the one with the guy and the girl like that on it on 360, I think. I feel like that was like a remake of the first one.
That was like the Front Mission of 4, maybe.
Something like that.
Or Front Mission Evolved.
It might have been that one.
If it was real time, it was Front Mission Evolved.
I don't even remember. It was ages ago. It was 1,000 years if it was a day. But yeah. But none of those things, it's so wild to me. It's like Castlevania. It's like Konami with Castlevania, where it's just like, bro, like this game is so supreme. Why don't you make more?
Everyone knows the Castlevania style,
yeah,
the aesthetic, the character, all of that. It's transcended well beyond what it ever was, and yet they're just like, yeah, we will do nothing with it because we are Konami.
Yeah,
we'll let everybody else put it in every other game, though. V Rising is getting Simon Belmont as a boss fight. That looks fun as fuck.
Of course, it's a survival game, so I won't touch it.
Okay, I hear you, but it's a really good fucking game.
And
it actually has good combat, unlike most survival games, because it's made by the Balatro people.
And Dead Cells got the Castlevania expansion. Like, yeah, everybody's doing it except for them.
Was I on this podcast where I was talking about the Castlevania pachinko machines?
That sounds like something we would talk about.
I do not recall.
One of the Castlevania pachinko machines is there's a character, and I need to look her up again, but it's a vampire hunter who is a contemporary of Simon Belmont, who apparently invented the booty shorts circa 1790.
Good for her.
Really striking him.
Mankind thanks you.
Yeah, good.
I mean, that's not far off from what Simon's wearing then, so, yeah.
That's true.
You're not wrong.
When you phrase it like that, it's a blow for equal, right?
That's true.
Although I was randomly thinking of Castlevania stuff the other day. Does anybody know if they're actually making a Bloodstained 2? Or whatever the hell Iga's doing these days?
I believe
she's still doing stuff with Bloodstained 1.
Yeah, I believe they are, because I know they did 2 Curse games, and I believe the idea is to make another one of the like full-fledged,
the main ones, yeah,
2.5D, which I hope it looks better than the first one. Like I wrote I believe I was in charge of the IGN guide for that.
I enjoyed it. It didn't quite hit the highest highs of the Igavania stuff. Like Symphony of the Night and Aria of Sorrow are still like the pinnacle of that, and Order of Ecclesia is still like unsung awesome.
I think that's probably still my favorite, or it's one of the Soma Cruise games. But I think that those, I think
Aria of Sorrow, that for sure.
The 2 Soma Cruise games and the one where what's her name, Shinoa. I think it's Shinoa.
Shinoa is Order of Ecclesia.
Yeah. I think that those 3 are my favorite Castlevania games, and then Symphony of the Night's behind them. But yeah.
Dissonance and Portrait are underrated.
What's that?
Dissonance and Portrait are underrated.
Portrait of Ruin, that's the one where you're the brother and sister pair, like the blonde guys, and you have to draw the spells on the bottom of the
Jonathan
DS.
and Charlotte, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
Jonathan.
Yeah.
I didn't get that far in that one. I think I was playing it on like a cracked cart or something like that.
You're the son of the protagonist of Castlevania Bloodlines.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's actually some pretty juicy lore tidbits in Portrait of Ruin. If you are of a mind to try to Zelda together the official Castlevania timeline.
Yeah, you wanna figure out what happened in the 1999 Demon Castle War? You play Portrait of Ruin.
Yeah, to be fair, the big thing that gets me about Konami abandoning Castlevania isn't that they've done it. Because obviously they just want to pull together the easy money from stuff like Pachinko and mobile for the foreseeable future. Although every once in a while they have made another game. I mean, we're weeks out from the Operation Galuga drop, so I have to.
Pachinko ship has sailed because regulations happened a few years ago. So that's done.
That's why they come crawling back in.
Well, and I may be saying this by manifesting it, but we cannot be that far away from Way Forward being given the right to do a Castlevania game.
Certainly,
Maybe.
one hopes.
But more to the point, if they were going to go out on Castlevania, they could have at least had the grace to do it with the Demon Castle War.
Yeah.
I know.
Give us
Maybe one day.
Julius Belmont in the starring role, actually killing Dracula for real, for real.
Sealing him inside the moon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Madsmatic says, "Don't worry, I'm sure the show manages to unify the timeline in a sane and consistent fashion."
Oh yeah.
It's not as bad
ship has
about-
already sailed.
It's not as bad about that as you'd think.
I like the show. Yeah.
Yeah, the show is pretty good, although it's a little awkward to say this because he turned out to be a sicko, but I like Warren Ellis quite a bit. So the first 4 seasons, I had a lot of respect for him. The new one has its moments, but isn't quite as good.
They bring in a lot of bloodline stuff, speaking of in Nocturne, in ways that don't make sense because it's not World War II. But
And
Yeah,
also, it definitely made me a lot more sympathetic to Dracula, which I don't know if that's what they were going for, but
I think they were, to a certain extent, just because... I mean, to be fair, a lot of the stuff which people argue with about the first 4 seasons of Castlevania Netflix are stuff which is explicitly in Symphony of the Night.
yep.
Like the whole
How many
thing with...
people actually
like
made
the
it
whole
through the
thing with,
inverted castle?
Yeah, like the whole thing with Alucard's wife being... Alucard's mother and Dracula's wife being burned to death by witch hunters is is from an optional boss fight in Symphony of the Night.
Mhm. It's a succubus like impersonating her and trying to change the scene and tempt Alucard into vengeance. It's like, hang on, this isn't how it happened. And she's like, fuck. And you fight her.
I don't remember that.
It's pretty
Direct
easy to
quote,
miss.
succubus, fuck.
That's wild.
Succubus
Symphony of the Night's good.
Chillwave cover Scissor Sisters band.
Jesus Christ.
That's a cut.
All right, and with that, I think it's time that we talk about something else.
Please.
That's a perfect segue into Alpha Protocol, wouldn't you say, Chris?
Yeah,
I'd say so.
out of curiosity, why do you suddenly have a boner for Alpha Protocol? What's going on there? That seems like a deep cut.
Why do I
This
have...
came out of nowhere, and I need to know.
It didn't come out of nowhere. The reason that I am playing Alpha Protocol right now is because it is once again available for purchase.
Oh my god.
That's true. It was briefly unavailable.
It is now, and I got a key for it from our friends over at Good Old Games. So if you want to purchase Alpha Protocol, which is now available to own on GOG, you can do that. And I was playing some of it.
Yeah, it was delisted for a little while there for various reasons. So.
Yeah.
I remember I played through it on 360, and in the big climactic showdown part, apparently I'd done something wrong, and my character just aced one of the major supporting characters without me having a say in the matter. So I had to go back and figure out how I'd fucked that up.
Did
There's
you
a lot
figure
of
it out?
that.
Yeah, although it's one of those things where in retrospect I don't know how I had the attention span to do it. I actually had glitched something.
Oh, interesting.
Because 360 Alpha Protocol was barely functional. Fun, but you could break that game in a lot of exotic ways.
I mean, that's true of every version of it. The game was not finished. just straight up unfinished. And I love it. I adore that game.
Yeah, I'm liking what I'm playing so far. I'm just sneaking around, choosing my character's backstory, going through, being sassy with everybody. You know, it's very interesting that it's because this is a game that is from a very particular time in the
Cultural zeitgeist landscape. Contemporary.
I was gonna say like the bro shooter era, but I do think it's very interesting that like the first interaction that I had with you're playing a male character and you interact with a female character. The first interaction that you have an option to be like charming and try to be a smooth operator. And then you can flirt later, and she's like, nah, fam. Like,
nah.
We're here for business. And I'm like, interesting. Nice. I'm glad that this at least had the maturity level of like, not just the Mass Effect, like put your coin into the machine
before
every
Mass
time.
Effect ruined relationships.
Fall back to the ship as soon as you can. We'll bang, okay?
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of Human Chambers as a sex vending machine before now, but now it's all I'm going to be able to think of her as.
Well, I'm very sorry.
Wow.
But yes.
Please put $50 in quarters in your personal assistant.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? What was it, Evie or who was it? The one that the manifestation of the ship's central
Edie.
computer. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Did you just call her Evie?
Yeah, I did.
That's
I don't know
a
whether
different-
that was.
Forgot about that whole thing.
I don't know
Mass
that was
Effect's-
internalized V for Vendetta stuff. I don't know whether that was, something else. Who knows? Who can say? But yeah,
That was such a dumb decision in Mass Effect 3 to give her the fucking sex bot outfit. Like, what? Why?
yeah.
You know why.
You do know why.
I know exactly why. But I'm also questioning the...
It's like, what? Like Miranda wasn't enough for you guys? You guys need more? Garrus wasn't enough for you guys? Come on.
Garrus should be enough for everyone.
Anyways. Yeah.
But anyway, we were talking about Alpha Protocol.
We're talking about Alpha
Similar
Protocol.
era, though.
We're talking about Alpha Protocol. And I'm digging it. I like the hacking minigame. It's pretty fun. The one where you have to do like the codes and superimpose them over the other ones, man, that one's a little annoying. But I like the one where you're like just clipping the different circuits and tracing them through and stuff. That's pretty fun. Shooting seems decent, like cover-based shooting, which is very the wave of the time and is now back in a big way since the PS4 era. When
But because
Sony-
it's also an RPG, your targeting reticules and accuracy are wildly different.
Yeah. I think it's very, very interesting. I'm not done with it yet, but I'm very curious to hear, Kris, what your thoughts on it are. I haven't run into any issues in my playthrough on GOG, so I don't know.
You will.
Yeah, I don't know if any of those will come through, but so far so good.
Like, I know the GOG re-release has done a few little things, but it hasn't fixed what is fundamentally unfinished, broken, etc. about that game. Like, it was notoriously rushed, massively ambitious for what Obsidian wanted to do with it. And some of that shines through in ways that are really interesting and haven't really been replicated since, which is why I hold affection for the game. But it is broken in ways I've never experienced in a different game before. And so let me give you an anecdote that I've held on to for years now, right?
Oh, man. All right,
So-
here we go.
All right, so early on, it's still like the opening chapters or whatever, the big, Alpha Protocol name drop thing hasn't actually come into play yet. I'm doing like a little stealth section, and I try to get creative with stealth thing. I'm not very powerful in direct combat at that point, so it's like, I mess up, I get caught, I get killed. I'm like, fair enough. Load from save. So I load from the recent checkpoint. The enemies immediately turn and start running for my position.
Oh,
The alarm has not been triggered. I have not done anything else yet, but it persisted through the checkpoint, and they all just started running for me. And I'm just like, I have never experienced anything like this persisting.
Oh, man.
And
Yeah.
so I ended up in this
They knew you
massive.
reloaded.
Yeah.
It's like
How
Undertale.
dare
They're
you.
like, there he is, get him. Yeah, that was the moment where I'm just like, oh boy, this is as broken as I've heard.
Yeah.
Because I approached it a couple of years after the fact. And yeah, there's a lot of bugs both in time. There's times where the AI in that game functions really well, where they're actually very competent and such. There's other times where they're completely brain dead. There's other times where they just break apart. It has the other thing of, oh, the alarm gets triggered or your stealth drops, everyone knows where you are.
Yeah.
The dude in the guard tower now immediately turns and starts shooting you.
Yeah.
Just it's very binary. You are in stealth or you are in active gunfight shooter mode.
In retrospect, a lot of Obsidian's games at that point in the company's history had that same problem with ambition that outstretched their ability / budget / production timeline. Because KOTOR 2 is as much a kind of a loose pile of Lego as Alpha Protocol is. Both of them have a fan base, and deservedly so. And I distinctly remember a lot of people, when they heard that Obsidian was making Fallout New Vegas, were kind of expecting it to just detonate the moment you opened the game case. And then it turned out to actually be still arguably the best Fallout game, which
I don't even know if that's arguable at this point. But yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends on if you're a sicko.
If you're a classic sicko,
yeah. I was just talking to somebody. Apparently, the classic sickos are still a thing because
they are.
Somebody ran afoul of them talking about the new Amazon show.
Oh boy.
And I wonder if No Mutants Allowed is still open. That used to be the big OG Fallout sicko message board.
Yeah, I do remember that website, and it was the fan site and collation of just everything for Fallout for a long time.
Back when I was a member on Quarter to Three, Tom Chick's message board, it used to be a hangout for a lot of people who were journalists, writers, devs, just a lot of video game people were on there. And I remember when Bethesda first got the gig for Fallout 3, they first got the property rights, a lot of us were on a thread with somebody from Bethesda, and we were joking that Bethesda, as a direct reference to No Mutants Allowed, should put in a side quest inside a vault where everybody in the vault has had one source of entertainment for the last 200 years, and it's been the same circa 1998 open world RPG that they've just been obsessively playing over and over again for decades.
Nice.
Just get really meta about it.
Yeah, I don't think that's actually in Fallout 3 anywhere, but I was kind of disappointed.
That'd be a great thing, though. Just open the vault and it's full of Morrow boomers. My people.
He's trying to convert me. We'll see.
It's the best game ever. Why wouldn't you? But yeah,
see what happens.
Unlike Alpha Protocol, it's the best game ever.
But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that I'm interested to play more of it, but it's fascinating to see games that are well regarded by some, and in certain circumstances. One of the things that I've heard about this game is that it, like games like Baldur's Gate 3 and things like that, lets you fail forward, which I haven't experienced yet in my play of it yet, but I really like that. That's something that I'm a big fan of. And, like we were talking about earlier with Dishonored, that is, I think, although I did experience some significant degree of satisfaction playing through and never being seen in those games, even if it did recall or require the occasional reload and going back to the checkpoint, etc. There is something to be said for going in with a stealthy mindset and then things going south, and then you have an interesting story. where it's like, okay, I got myself into this corner. I really was confident that I was going to make it. And then they saw me and it was an absolute just clusterfuck. And I just blew my way out of there with a bunch of bombs and grenades and stuff. And eventually, hid in the bushes and then was able to evade them and things like that. So I find that those make for some of the most interesting moments. I mean, that's basically all that Metal Gear Solid 5 is just like one long improvisational session until you succeed or fail.
With a massive toolbox of fuckery to inflict on people.
I don't know. I think that you're right in that Alpha Protocol has that feel to it. But now that I'm thinking about it, the interesting thing about it is that it's kind of a dead evolutionary branch. There's a lot about it which transposes mechanics and decisions which up to that point had been more or less exclusively fantasy stuff. Baldur's Gates and what have you. And it makes a pretty good job at transposing most of that into a movie-style espionage story.
Yeah.
And I think
contemporary. Yeah,
and unfortunately for it came out at a point where being critically successful wasn't enough to it's kind of in that binary domain zone where there are a lot of 360/PS3 games which were very critically and cult successful, but not commercially successful, and that just involved a lot of things being abandoned.
Yeah.
Like binary domains on that list, you could probably come down with a good dozen games from that generation, which are just like that, where they could have had an incredible amount of impact on the medium if they had done any better, even a little better. But as it is, they're just kind of this interesting what-if story.
Yeah.
And Alpha Protocol taking that approach is... you could have had a lot of games like, for example, Baldur's Gate 3 right now, which have a similar amount of manipulability and player choice, but aren't a swords and dragons and elves and vampires and full frontal nudity and what have you.
Yeah. I mean,
I think the closest analog is Wasteland 3 in terms of that kind of reactivity, because I thought that was probably the most reactive RPG I'd played since. And yeah, that's again like post-apocalyptic Fallout-esque. So not quite the same as the fantasy stuff, but as you say, nothing quite like Alpha Protocol in terms of relative contemporary setting and transposing those elements and aspects pretty successfully. Because I think that is probably the best part of the game, is how it does the various, the reactivity and the RPG mechanics and how it all kind of ties that together really well.
It's interesting. You talked about it as an evolutionary dead end, which kind of gave me an idea. I feel like between like 2000 to 2002 to around 2010, maybe a little bit later, was kind of like the Cambrian explosion of like evolutionary kind of branches. You have these things like Baldur's Gate 2, which were, these vastly improved and focused, even if they are expanded versions of the original game. But then you also have a whole swath of, double A games, like your, or just A games in that kind of space where it's like, your binary domains, your Alpha Protocols. You've even got some things like your Vampire the Masquerade. You've got like all these sorts of things, where it's like, okay, this is a thing. And it's one of the things that I lament in the modern era, is that a lot of times there will be an idea and it's a good idea, and a sequel would have helped turn that good idea into a great idea, but it just never got the chance. And so then that just ends up being the end of it. Where like, you look at, let's see, like the Wolfenstein reboot, where they got into like way more of the occult stuff, where you go into Singularity, where they go into like the time travel thing. Yeah. I got you at that one, Thomas, huh?
Yeah. I played a lot of Singularity.
Yeah. like that era, we had a lot of interesting ideas, or you know, or resistance. You know, when you have things like I don't know if it was unique. It was the first time I experienced it, where you'd have something like the bullseye, where you fire a tracer round and then you can aim anywhere and it's going to curve the bullets towards it. And it's like having those sorts of wrinkles on classic gunplay is so interesting. And the fact that like we really don't have shooter games that have guns that shoot in anything other than a straight line. Like we really don't have a lot of things that iterate on that and kind of play with the box in a way that a lot of these A and AA games were doing.
Yeah, there was definitely, in that general time period you're talking about, it feels like there's more of a killing floor.
Yeah.
I remember at one point, one of the first official strategy guides ever was for Phantom Brave on the PS2. One of the... yeah, it's a good game. And unfortunately for it got released into the 2004 Meat Grinder. I remember it was directly up against, I want to say, Star Ocean 2, and just got minced.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a fairly common story about those two generations in particular.
Yeah.
Where you can only, people will talk nowadays about how you are competing with other people for not so much money anymore because of flash sales and what have you, but for a finite amount of your audience's time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in that day and age, it felt like there was always one big winner and a whole lot of losers. Now it feels like there's not so much. There are institutions, and there are minor successes, and then there's everything else.
Yeah.
It does feel like things are much more broadly spread, as opposed to this period we're discussing where you had distinct games where they were doing interesting things, but they didn't have an organized brand name, or they came out at exactly the wrong time, or what have you, and just got blown up on impact.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Shadow Hearts games on PS2.
Yeah.
Those games rule, yeah.
Yeah. And if you go back and you look at their release calendars, and hell, Mads is in the chat. Mads and I made a joke about this 20 years ago. The first Shadow Hearts goes directly up against Final Fantasy X and gets ether blasted into the next dimension.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, the second one came out directly opposite something like a Grand Theft Auto game or something. Just had no chance of survival. And we were joking that the third game is getting released in America despite all of that, which means there's going to be a direct meteor impact on the polar ice cap.
It's got the Horizon problem. Yeah.
Yeah, in retrospect, I should have mentioned Horizon, because Horizon's got the same problem.
It just
That's
keeps
what everybody
releasing
associates
at the
it
same
now,
time
yeah.
as generation-defining games.
Yeah, and that's actually, we could do a whole ass interview or book club series or what have you, or a feature about all of these dead evolutionary branches from those two generations in particular, where just in retrospect they were doing a lot of really interesting things. It's just they had no chance of success because they came out the wrong time or at the wrong season, or they just were an original IP at the worst possible time.
Yeah. And we talk about dead ends. One of the interesting things about Phantom Brave in particular is that didn't get a follow-up, but the spirit of that did carry on into things like Makai Kingdom and then ultimately like Disgaea. Even though it's not the same, but it is interesting what gets kind of shaved off the edges of these games and what it gets turned into. And then we've got, what is it, the Monster Chef game, which is the new one, which actually goes back and kind of reclaims some of the Phantom Brave elements while also embracing like some other more modern kind of things. We've got a lot of ingredients in this kitchen, and we're like, okay, I really liked how much onion there was in the last thing that I made. Let's take some of that onion, let's put it in this new dish, and let's try it with something else. And we're just trying to figure out different combinations of stuff that works. But sometimes, even though you enjoyed a dish, it can go a long time before you get to eat it again. And I think it would be interesting to go back and re-examine, like, because there are, and it's not just in the game space, like there are also some things, even from just the console manufacturers, where it's like, how many people, if when the next PlayStation comes out, how many things will appear that were originally pitched as part of the Xbox One? Like how many things, as we continue to proceed far away from physical media and a wider adoption of digital only things, how many of those like digital quality of life things that Microsoft was trying to force the audience to adopt at that time, that were part of the reason why that console failed, how many of those are actually going to become the norm because Microsoft was just too soon? I don't know.
I think by this chef metaphor you're using, Alpha Protocol was an interesting but experimental pizza that unfortunately was burned to a crisp.
Or the dough was still
alternatively
raw.
wasn't. Yeah, that's it. Wasn't cooked enough.
The outside was raw. The middle was raw.
The outside was raw. The inside was burnt.
The kitchen was on fire, and it was in a toxic waste dump.
It was.
But for all that, weirdly
fucking good pizza though.
But you have to really talk people into taking that first bite.
Yeah, it has a lot of interesting flavors on it. You know, a lot of interesting flavors. But it is definitely the Donald Glover coming back into the apartment with the pizza and everything's on fire.
You started mentioning Donald Glover. Like, where is he going? Oh, right, Community. Okay.
Yeah. Mad says it's a pizza, but they put a ramen in front of you. Hey, I'm not going to argue with them. If they put, depending on where the ramen is from, I won't argue. I almost went and got some pizza.
What
today.
if the ramen's on the pizza?
Oh my Lord, ramen pizza. Hey, yo, bro, we heard you like carbs.
One of my favorite pizzas I've ever had is actually a nachos pizza.
A nachos pizza? I've definitely had taco pizza.
When I was in college, the guy who ran a D&D game I was in had a bunch of roommates who worked at the local Pizza Hut, and they stole shit from that place constantly. And they came back one night with a bunch of raw ingredients and made what they called a chicken quesadilla pizza, which I've been trying to replicate ever since because it was actually really good.
Oh. Color me intrigued. I like chicken quesadillas and I like pizza.
And one of the things I'm actually thinking about trying to make next weekend, one of the recent episodes of Binging with Babish is a chicken parm pizza.
Ooh.
Where you just tenderize a bunch of chicken breasts and make that into the crust.
Oh my. Gluten-free, baby. Meat only.
I need to watch that Babish episode.
That's very interesting. I've been meaning to get into that because I'm now the cook in our family. So I've been checking out a bunch of different stuff. There was what was it? Jacob Kindlin or something like that was the person who got me into it. He did some tour of like America, trying out a bunch of different hamburgers and talking about what was good and bad about each of them. And I was like, interesting. And then I watched like a bunch of his other stuff.
I'll have to send you a link to this cookbook, which I got a lot of use out of when I was in my first apartment.
Nice. Yeah, I think Audrey just picked up a plants only cookbook where it's just like making like vegan stuff.
Have you ever heard of Thug Kitchen?
Mm-mm.
It's this website from a few years ago that eventually came out with a cookbook, and the joke was it was making vegan cuisine with all sorts of recipes, but it was all phrased like just the most offensively vulgar hip-hop stereotype you could possibly imagine. And then it turned out that the people who wrote it were two smacked white asses from San Francisco.
Wow.
Beautiful.
The recipes are actually still pretty decent if you're looking to make vegan food. My brother gave me their cookbook as a gift, as a gag gift, because my brother has never given me a single Christmas gift that was not a quiet little fuck you.
Yeah.
And to be fair, still a couple of decent recipes in it, just you kind of have to hold your breath and your nose and just, yeah, it's a good recipe, but you guys are assholes.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Madsmatic says, so Alpha Protocol was made by Kay's Kitchen.
Not following.
No.
Yeah, that's a reference I don't get.
No. 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 There is quality in there. I promise you.
Would you like to share something with the class here, Kris? What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on?
If it's a Kay's Kitchen, I'm thinking of, it's awful. Just someone who cannot cook to save their life.
Nice.
No,
Oh, yeah. Speaking of
Protocol. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, you're going to talk about Alpha Protocol. Go ahead. I was going to change the subject entirely.
I just wanted to say, I feel like it's one of those games where, as we've said, it should have got a sequel, or it needed the ideas iterated on. It was very experimental in a lot of what it did, and because it was a commercial flop, and Sega just didn't give it the time of day, it will never happen.
And hell, even if it had come out a few years later in the age of the day one patch.
The day one patch or the Kickstarter window, that kind of thing. But,
early access, yeah.
I think that was this before? I can't remember if Alpha Protocol came out before or after New Vegas.
I want to say that Alpha Protocol was 2011.
It was 2010.
Mm-hmm. And New Vegas I'm pretty sure that was after that.
2010. So. Hold on.
Oh,
let me see which one is early. Let's see. Released on October 19th, 2010.
Probably different themes then.
For New Vegas.
And Alpha Protocol, I think, was in development for longer, and then just because it was so ambitious, they really messed it up.
Release date June 1st, 2010.
Well, Sega in that generation had a real hard time with giving a fuck about much of anything. This is the same. True. This is the same era of Sega, which gave us Aliens, Colonial Marines.
Yeah,
just
for $5 and several years of bug fixes, Colonial Marines is a decent afternoon.
Yeah, because somebody went into the code and actually figured out why the alien AI was broken.
How dare you? My favorite, my favorite part of James Cameron's Aliens was when the Xenomorph spent that harrowing 5 minutes humping a wall.
It's the best part.
That wall had a family.
And it had even more
and
family
now the family
afterwards.
is face hugged.
Yeah, I was going to say it had even more family afterwards because it actually face hugged the wall and forcibly impregnated it, making it equally terrifying as the rest of the message of those movies.
I have questions, but I don't like the answer, so
You won't.
Let's just steer it away from that.
Let's steer it away from that. All right. Well, that's basically all I had to say about Alpha Protocol, Kris, unless you had more that you wanted to say before I wrap up everything I had to talk about.
Yeah, just I wish some of the ideas, particularly the way the dialogue is handled, got a chance to be iterated on, because the fact that the conversations always continue moving. There's no time to pause and reflect, and you as the character, you're given emotions, like up to 4 emotions that correspond to a button press, and you have to choose basically on the fly as the conversation is going what tone your response is going to be, and then the character replies from that. And some people are just like, well, that's not what I wanted to say. It's like, yeah, but it's what the character said.
Yeah.
You're just trying to channel them appropriately in the right situation. And I thought that system was really cool and had a lot of legs.
Yep.
And I would love to see more of it.
I like I like it because they literally, there are some games, there's different ways to do this. There's we're going to show you exactly what your character is going to say, but unfortunately you're not going to get the tone of how they're going to say it. And sometimes that'll be wrong. Then it'll be, well, this is just kind of like a paraphrased version of what they're going to say. So they might actually say a different thing that wasn't really what you were intending. And then like, it's literally just a word. Like it'll be suave or professional or patient or irritable or something like that. And it's like, oh, okay. So this is just literally just a vibe that they're going to get out of that. And then how far that goes is based off, whatever the character decides to do with that. But yeah, I think that's interesting.
As opposed to the Fallout 4 system of yes, sarcastic, yes, but I'd like to ask more, and no.
Yeah. which is less interesting to me. But anyway,
For sure.
Did anybody have anything else they wanted to talk about?
So I have got a column on a regular basis coming from the Minus World imprint in a hard drive pretty soon here, where I will sit down every Friday and talk about an indie game. Because I get 80 indie game pitches in my email every week, and I can't do anything with any of them because we live in a world devoted to search engine optimization, and nobody's searching for any of these things. So since hard drive is on its crowdfunded arc, I can talk anybody into anything apparently, I am going to do some indie game coverage on a regular basis. So I've been playing a lot of indie games the last week or so. I was playing a lot of the Gene Forge 2 remaster, which came out relatively recently, which is an old school RPG from 2003. I've been playing a lot of Inkbound, like I was telling you about, Brian, which is a kind of a weird multiplayer roguelike, which has a little... The problem I always have is that Slay the Spire was the first roguelike I really got into. So whenever I play a new roguelike, I always have to... my first thought is always, this reminds me of Slay the Spire, and it's usually bullshit. Just because my reference pool is relatively limited. And there's another horror game called Withering Rooms, which I'm going to check out pretty soon here, which is kind of this... It's yet another game about being a Victorian orphan running away from creepy adults in a haunted mansion, but apparently this one I can actually hack them to death with an axe.
Oh, nice.
So, nice. Yeah, that's always a point in my... And I'm not even being goofy about it. If I can fight back, I always like these games a little bit better, as opposed to having to just kind of hide under the table for half the running time.
The Outlast problem.
Yeah. Outlast 2 really turned me off when I realized that I was being chased around, unable to retaliate against just some ass bucket in a robe. It wasn't even anything that I should have been scared of. It was just... Any given piece of patio furniture I was passing as I ran away from these people, I could have just fractured their skulls and been done with it. But so I will be cracking heavily into the indie scene in the near future, and hopefully the column will take off and I'll be able to become a full-time indie douchebag.
Nice.
Here's hoping.
I think many of us here aspire to the same heights.
I too aspire to be an indie douchebag, yes.
I think we're all just kind of sick of writing about stuff that everybody is already talking about.
Yeah. One of the things that I take most seriously about our job is bringing unknown things to the fore. And I think that sort of video game cultural maven role isn't really being filled by that many people in the industry, and wanting to do more of that, considering there are so many different little pockets of niche genres and things that are kind of underserved or don't get clicks and so don't get greenlit at bigger sites. So we try to do what we can here, and it's good to hear that there's going to be something in print as well.
Well, online anyway, and plus it's because Hard Drive and the Hard Times went crowdfunded early this year, which is a whole story, and I know that there's been some controversy around that I'm not really that privy to. But the upside is that now it means that Hard Drive in particular is being run by a publisher who no longer feels particularly beholden to any commercial interests, and is kind of a zine scenester to begin with. So it is weirdly attractive to him to pitch things which are going to have to build an audience rather than having an audience built into it. And to a certain extent, what's been frustrating me for the last 3 years or so is that there are more indie games out there now than there have ever been before. It has never been easier to make them. It has never been easier to promote them. And if you've got $100, you can get them on Steam. And at the same time, there are very few people who are actually willing to cover them, aside from a handful of YouTubers. And that has its own problems. Because while there are perfectly good YouTubers, I have been around enough influencer managers to know that for every good YouTuber, there are half a dozen who wouldn't know anything about valid critical theory if it bit them on the taint. So, and for better or for worse, I can say with a fairly high degree of confidence that I do understand critical theory. So I'm hoping to bring some of that to bear and talk about just shitloads of indie games and get some exposure going, if for no other reason than it's at very least more interesting to talk about than whatever AAA bullshit's going on right then.
Yeah.
Because I think well, no, not here, but I've talked in a couple of places about how you mentioned Our Job. One of the problems with modern mainstream games in Our Job is a lot of them are perfectly good if it's the only game like it you play that year. If you're a typical audience member who isn't going to play every Sony open world game, or even half of them, if you're just going to play Spider-Man 2 and be done with it, then it's fine. It's a perfectly decent way to spend 20 hours of your life. You'll be entertained, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll learn a little something about yourself. But if you're playing, that plus Assassin's Creed, plus Ghost of Tsushima, plus whatever else is going, whatever Far Cry is that coming out that year, then eventually you're going to feel like you're playing the same thing in slightly different hats 5 times a year.
Yeah.
For 80 hours apiece. We all know that the interesting stuff in games right now is happening in the indie space, at the same time that nobody's really looking at it with the care or attention it deserves. So hopefully something can be done about that.
Yeah.
You have at least +1 reader from me, because absolutely I agree with everything you just said and then some. So
also, I just PayPal'd him $50 to be my booster here, so that helps.
I'm not going to say no to money.
Especially since he's Australian. $50 from me is like his own personal fighter jet there.
Which is what he's going to buy.
I'm going to buy me a Ferrari.
Oh, I was going to say, well, we all know how thoroughly weaponized the Australian public is. Just
you got to be weaponized.
Fighter jets.
Got to be weaponized against the drop bears, dog.
It's true.
Well, that's why I want a Ferrari, because then I can turn it into a Mad Max vehicle, a shiny one, and chrome.
I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but I would definitely go with something which has better gas mileage for your mainstay vehicle.
You're right, but there's also the street cred thing you got to do. Rule by fear and respect.
That's true. That's true. You are sending a message if you've weaponized a Ferrari as opposed to a sensible Prius.
Or, you could go the intimidation route, like I was going to suggest, and just get a hearse, weaponize that, and be like, we're just going to throw you in the back.
Right now we're fan casting a new Twisted Metal game, and I'm about it. Don't get me wrong.
We are.
Lucas, what does your apocalypse wagon look like?
Instead of an ice cream truck, it's like a hot dog cart.
I respect it.
The Oscar Mayer Murdermobile. I do respect that.
Or just like a street dog vendor.
Yeah,
and he's not even
exactly.
driving. He's just like pushing the cart down the road really fast.
Yeah, I'm riding on it, kind of like a shopping cart.
And the weapons are he's got the tongs, and he takes the hot dog out, and it's so hot he just throws it and it just melts right through them.
Exactly.
I think we're onto something.
He's got oh my God. And you've got, how you've got like some of the options to like shoot an oil slick backwards. It's just the hot dog water. He just pours it out behind him, and then they're just slipping all over the place. Come on, guys. Come on. You want me to
fund this.
Hire me as your creative director to make these sorts of games. Come on.
Coming soon to a Kickstarter near you.
Yeah.
Ribnax's Rib Snacks, the vehicular combat game.
I love it.
Indeed. I love it. In fact, my cheeks are hurting from smiling too much. You can tell that I haven't used my smiling muscles that much recently.
Oh, no.
Anyways, That's a little pre-show reference. But
It's funny because he's been playing a lot of blues guitar.
and you're like, wait, that's not a blues guitar. That's like a metal guitar. Well, it depends on what you play on it. Anyways, did anybody have anything else that they wanted to do before I sneak downstairs and get some chips and salsa and maybe make some popcorn?
Don't want to get in the way of your popcorn.
Yeah,
Why don't you just
not.
put the salsa on the popcorn?
There you go.
Well, because I already have Cajun seasoning on the popcorn, and I don't want to double up on my spice. You know what I mean?
No, but I'm just, I'll probably save most of my, but Inkbound is kind of a fun multiplayer roguelike, although it's getting really hard at the point I'm at. And it has a storyline, but it's just kind of, it feels like something that's mostly happening without me, which is a bizarre approach.
How so? Like from a gameplay perspective, or?
Well, the thing is that it's a roguelike, so you go out and you run missions. The entire game is basically set in what amounts to the universe inside a book. As one of the Inkbound, you are basically a silent golem made of ink, which is sent out into corrupted parts of the book to try to bring back information or make things happen. And it's pretty difficult, and there's a pretty narrow margin of error. So it's pretty easy to fail a run. And the way that it works is every time you accomplish anything, you unlock better tools with which your next run might be a little bit better. It isn't a Vampire Survivors thing where your character gets more powerful. It's that you unlock options which make your next build potentially better.
So kind of like Rogue Legacy or something?
Yeah, like I said, I think of it as being like Slay the Spire. There are probably a lot of games that do that. But Slay the Spire, you never get more powerful. You just unlock better relics that mean that you have a better chance next time in case you get one of those relics, which may really make your build sing.
Gotcha.
And Inkbound does
More
this.
options, yeah.
As opposed to Hades, where like you actually are becoming more powerful as you invest more darkness in the mirror.
Yeah, your base stats actually go up, so you're going to be able to plow through the early part better next time.
Yeah.
But here, your stats always stay roughly the same. You have more tools when, you get relics which give you up to 3 potential passive abilities and statuses you can inflict and what have you. But it seems like you can accomplish quite a lot in terms of story goals or quest goals in Inkbound without realizing that's what it is you just did. So I'll come back to the hub level after failing a run, and a bunch of people will have something new to say to me. It's like, oh, so I just failed upwards. Got it. And it feels like I didn't really have a lot to do with it, but at the same time, it's got an addictive enough basic engine behind it. I meant to say loop, gameplay loop behind it, that I'm very interested in trying again. Especially since it's one of those games where start to finish, one round takes you 20 minutes if you linger. And for some reason, those are always the games I spend the most time on. Because
Just one more run. One more run.
It's part of why Stardew Valley is so dangerous for me, because I'll go out, I go to bed and I'll just go, this will be my last day of gameplay. And then I'll wake up in the morning and go outside my house and see what's changed and how my crops are. And before I know it, I'm 15 minutes into the next day.
Yeah.
And you have to finish the day before it lets you save, so...
I've accomplished enough already that I might as well just see the day through. And now it's 5 a.m. and I haven't eaten today.
That's me and Balatro. But at least it's safe. I can theoretically stop anytime I want.
I'll just go mid-hand and go downstairs, grab a meal, come back up, see how my hand went.
Well, see, that's the problem with you playing Balatro on a Steam Deck. Is now you don't actually have to leave it at all, anywhere.
For any reason, ever.
My 70 hours on Switch can already attest to that. This will just be easier for me to keep all my progress in one place.
But yeah, Inkbound recommended then?
Push to talk. Yeah, I can probably recommend Inkbound, especially if you're a big fan of like we were talking like Rogue Legacy or Slay the Spire or anything else in that kind of general roguelike gene pool. This has more of a like a tactical RPG feel to it than a card game or what have you. So if you're a tactical RPG sicko, then you'll probably have more fun with Inkbound than you did with any of the various
Tell
card
me
games.
more.
Well, you have a certain amount of movement on a field at the start of a round, and you have energy you can spend, and it has areas of effect, and as opposed to like a bunch of the games that came out after Slay the Spire, which were also like Deck of Ashes or Rogue Book, which were just another card game with a slightly different mechanics. This has more of a free-form RPG aspect to it. It actually reminds me kind of like Grandia 2, but that's just because I'm old.
Okay,
I'm with you.
I haven't played Grandia 2. I was gonna ask if it was like the combat in the Chinese monk sections of Live Alive or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't played that.
Gotcha.
So we're gonna have
Live.
we'll just have to volley this back and forth until we found something we've both played.
So like Into the Breach. Except,
Well, yeah, except it's more freeform and there are no hexes.
okay. So like Massive Chalice.
Haven't played that one. I will just do something like stream it through Discord after we're done here, and that'll do more to. Anyway,
Gotcha.
but yeah, it's a pretty decent roguelike, and you can play it with up to 2 friends if you're into that. So I've been meaning to put that together. So if you've still got that code you said you were sent, Brian, then
Yeah, I should.
means.
I should. I have not installed it yet. But yeah.
Yeah, and it just came out of early access on Steam, and it feels like it's got a fair amount of players right now. So, at the very least, I'm seeing a lot of people in the hub level every time I go back to it.
Can you play it alone, or do you actually need? Is it one of those things where like you need other people to progress past like difficult enemies?
I feel like there are a couple of the character options which are meant to be played in a group because they don't feel like they make a lot of sense solo. Because playing solo, the only character class that I've really gotten any mileage out of so far is the Obelisk, which is your pretty textbook, by defending I also attack sort of character.
So like kind of Thorns stuff.
Yeah, you can definitely have a pretty good play style by stacking shields and spikes so everybody beats themselves to death against you. There are a bunch of other characters which don't appear to have any defensive options to speak of. Their whole game plan is either just don't be there when it hits or just kill everything as fast as you can. And by the time you're into the higher levels of difficulty, just killing things before they kill you is no longer an effective option. But part of it's just that my brain always wants to wrap itself around characters which succeed by playing defensively. And that's just a limitation I have the way I approach games. And I know that it's not going to be the same way for everybody. But that's probably my biggest ding against Inkbound playing it solo, is that it feels like there are a bunch of classes which don't really work the way the game is trying to put itself across to you.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I just checked, and I did actually get 3 keys like you did. So, Kris, Lucas, if either of you guys want to check it out as well,
Sure, why not?
One of you,
Yeah, why not?
I can shoot you guys over Steam keys for that, and then we can jump in at some point this week or next week or what have you. Yeah, that is interesting, and I did not know this, but this is from the team that did Monster Train, which was another good one of these games.
You know, I saw that, and a buddy of mine is actually really addicted to Monster Train, says it's really good. And I didn't realize until I heard him talking about it that every time somebody had said, it's by the Monster Train guys, I thought I was hearing Monster Prom.
Oh, another good game. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, oh,
Different game entirely.
so the weird visual novel guys moved on to a roguelike. Okay, interesting drift, but, live your truth, boys.
Yeah.
But... so
you tried to get a date with Medusa, and now it's time for you to be an anthropomorphic ink blot going out and trying to save a book, Page Master style.
Yeah.
Can you date the
If there's any justice in the world.
What's that joke from the old, like, what if you tried talking to the cyber demon? But yeah, I could talk about a couple of other things I've been playing, but Inkbound's gotten the majority of my time. I've also been fucking around a lot with Stardew Valley mods, but that's old. I've got 3 wives now, and every in-game day lasts an hour and a half.
Nice.
It's actually a much cozier game when there's no time crunch. It's interesting.
I believe it.
Because default Stardew Valley, a day, 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. when you have to go to bed, is about 14 minutes. So it always feels like you're racing if you want to do more than one thing in a day.
It's true.
And there's a mod called Longer Days, fittingly, where you can put up that multiplier by up to 6 times. So now a full in-game day is an hour and 24 minutes in real time.
Oh.
Which gives you pretty much plenty of time to do pretty much anything you'd want to do in any given day in Stardew Valley.
Nice.
So if you're looking for an excuse to jump back in and play it like a straight up no frills cozy game, then that mod's a pretty good option. Although it does fuck up the power curve something fierce.
I believe it. Yeah, there are some. Speaking of which, I probably shouldn't mention this, but there are some pretty sick Balatro mods out as well.
Oh no! Don't tell me.
That introduce reverse tarot cards that have like the opposite effects and
do me a favor.
Whole new decks, whole new jokers.
I want you to go to. Is there a Nexus mods page for Balatro?
I actually don't know.
Go there, check the box that says "Only show adult mods," and tell me what it says.
I was just about to say, like, oh wow, there's literally only 2 mods that exist on here. Balatro.
I was really hoping for fuckable cards.
Adults. Wait, hold on.
Just replace all the Joker art with, pin-ups.
I've just realized how easy it is to get him to really, really fuck up his search history. And this is more power over another human being than I deserve.
Yeah, but why not?
But it's fun, though.
Balatro adults only. Nothing.
Well, shit.
Get on that internet.
Yeah, come on. We need to rule 34 of this card game. Come on.
I just hung my ass out in the breeze, depending upon the internet's perversion. This is the one time it fails me.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's what happens.
But it fails you in defense of me, which I'll allow.
Look, anyone who might program that is too busy playing Balatro to actually do it. That's why.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Madsmatic in the chat says, I just heard roll 34. What did I miss? You missed adults only Balatro. Come on. You missed the Balatro nude mods. Come on.
Yeah, Mads, I'm going to need you to do some anthropomorphic card girls. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
The first time I was on this show, I mentioned how I have a friend where it's really easy to get a laugh out of him by turning everything into a light novel title. Mads is that friend.
Nice. Everybody needs one.
Ay.
All right.
Anyway, so let's let Brian get to his Cajun popcorn.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think here's a good place to wrap it up, folks.
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to continue from there next time. Thanks for joining us, Madsmatic.
Let me know when how you 3 handle the Inkbound co-op. Maybe I'll jump in on that if the time is right.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, we'll hit you up in the Discord, and we'll have to set something up for that.
Word.
Thomas, thank you for joining us for this episode.
You're not my real dad.
Well,
I'm pretty sure I said that last time too.
I can always pretend. And maybe someday you'll come around and warm up to me. I just want to be there for you. I just want to make sure you know.
You're older than me. It doesn't work.
Anyways, it's been episode 309 of the Platformers, if you can believe it. Actually, it's still episode 309, even if you don't believe it. But yeah, I'm your host.
Your belief is not required.
Your belief is not required. In fact, I think it would be more fun if you didn't believe me. But
belief can change the nature of the episode title.
That's also true. But it's mostly my belief. And actually, Chris's belief is pretty important in that now, which is nice. I love to see Kris coming up in the world where his belief can influence reality. But anyways.
The problem is nowadays, if you make a joke about the Heisenberg principle, people think you're talking about Breaking Bad.
Walter White. Anyways, if you got thoughts or themes or popcorn dreams that you want to share with us on social media, you hit me up at Ribnax on Twitter and at Brian Barnett at Blue Sky and Backlogged. And if you want to see the show live, I'm a bit out of it, so that's why my rhythm's a little bit off. You can check me out at twitch.tv/Ribnax, RIBNAX, and YouTube at the same name, where you can watch the show on VOD. You can catch us at podcast services all over the place. Please leave us a good review or tell somebody about it if you like the show. It is a labor of love, and we do it out of the goodness of our hearts, and our hearts are not comprised of only goodness, so you better be nice to us. Anyways, Kris, where can people find you?
You can find me, Kris Cornelise, on my website of versusthebacklog.com, vsthebacklog.com, one word. I'll update it one day, I swear. You can find me on the internet and most things as Delpheir, Delfeir. And I want to hear all your best Twisted Metal fan creations, please. Also the Balatro nude mod. How about you, Lucas?
Hey, you can find me on socials at HokutoNoLucas. You can find writing such as my Harold Halibut review on Shack News. I have a lot of stuff coming up between now and like the next 10 days. I'm so very busy and tired, but hopefully it will be worth it on the other side of this. Yeah, stay tuned for all that.
Nice. Thomas, where can everybody find you?
My day job is covering the Seattle area video game industry for GeekWire. You can find me on Blue Sky at Stolisomancer, STOLISOMANCER, and on Backlogged at TV's Wanderer, TVS Wanderer. My column, as of yet unnamed, for Hard Drive is going to be started coming out on Fridays at some point in the near future. You can also keep an eye out for my interview with the creator of Heartworm on VGBs whenever that launches, which I have no idea when that's going to be, but soon. I got paid for it, so I get the most important part is done.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
nice. Yeah, I've got some preview stuff coming up for IGN, and I've got some more like kind of promotional rundown preview / interviews coming up soon, but I have not locked down the details on that, so you will hear more if you tune into my socials. But anyways, from everybody here at the Platformers, we hope you have a wonderful week and stay safe out there. Because until next time, we are out.
Peace.
Be nice or we'll fucking kill you.
My God.